Hello and welcome to my channel, She's Just Trying. I'm Hearts, and today we're trying something a whole lot different from the Reddit videos, Animal Crossing Let's Play, and fandom deep dives that I've been doing recently. So, if you know me, you know I write a lot of stories. I'm currently writing a novel, I have a large folder of short stories and drabbles on my laptop, and I even have a small hidden Tumblr page where I post short stories. So when I found out that the infamous Onision had a book, I decided to check it out. And yeah, it's not great. Now this video isn't gonna be me talking about the book and dissecting it and calling it horrible garbage. Nope, the thing is when I was reading it, I found one thing, that there is technically a story there. And yes, as controversial as this opinion is, I do say there is a story. It's just that the Onion Boy isn't the best of writers. Which isn't an attack on him, yeah. For some people, writing isn't their strongest point. For me, drawing isn't mine. My friend helps me out with all the Hearts drawings, and I don't pretend I'm a brilliant artist. Reading it got me thinking, Hearts, what if you rewrote the book and made it slightly more readable? And so that's what I did, and I'm about to read chapter 1 of what I've edited. And oh, note, if this video gets slightly too long, I'll split chapter 1 into 2 parts. And if you guys like my fixes, I'll continue into chapter 2 and make this like a series. Now, without further ado, here's my version of Stones to Abbigale by Onision. Chapter 1. Perfect imperfections, an oxymoron that I finally understood when I met her. I'd always been the kind of person to hyperfixate on the smallest of things. How the stars moved in the sky, the cool, calming breeze on a sunny day, the scattered patches of grass under my feet, a cascade of external imagery causing me to forget myself. Sometimes I realize that I may go an entire lifetime never understanding who I really am, like an internal safe, waiting for the right key to let out a precious jewel of knowledge. My eyes fluttered open, an abrupt ending of a dream pulling me out of a peaceful slumber and into a pure white room, which caused me to groan at the sight. The light from cracked open window blinds bounced off newly painted walls and all but blinded me, causing me to shield my eyes. My mother had taken it upon herself to paint the walls the brightest shade of white known to man, in an attempt to either psychologically damage me or rid me of my current depressive episode. She concluded that the darker colors in my room must have been the cause, after reading about the effects of colors on children in Mother's Monthly. I personally felt comforted by them, but I could see where she came from, though it didn't stop the intense light from giving me a migraine. I rolled onto my side, away from the light, to face my clock, an old piece of junk that I refused to throw away. It had lost its ability to chime, the time 8:17 displayed boldly over a blank face of the clock. I watched the time change for a few moments, my imagination giving the static clock a dumb look, complimenting its failure to behave any way outside its random glitch-infested nature. In the clean plastic face, I noticed my reflection, a dorky smile staring back at me. I let out a soft chuckle before rolling out of bed and getting ready for school. Hastily and without breakfast, I ran out of the house, yelling a quick goodbye to no one in particular. I had been late for school so many times that I have become a master at forging late notes. I didn't even think that the teachers in my school really cared enough to verify if it was real, with how underpaid and overworked they were. The air around me was crisp with winter air, the sharp wind hitting me, forcing tears to bundle in the corner of my eyes as I ran down the sidewalk. I walked past Lara and Raymond in my haste, watching from the corner of my eye as they walked in the opposite direction, no doubt headed to the spot where some students hid, away till the end of the school day. It was almost childish the way they held hands and smiled excitedly, as if they were stealing a cookie from a cookie jar. Mr. Hanson, my middle-aged history teacher, rolled his eyes as I walked into class. "Late again, James," he chided, watching me take my seat. "See me after class," he said, before turning away from me and busying himself at his desk. "I have a note," I squeaked out, a vain attempt to grab his attention. He waved me off in a silent way to say he didn't care, before continuing his lecture on another historical event that I truly didn't care about. I watched the time tick by, jotting down the occasional note here and there. With only 15 minutes left in class, I decided to look around the classroom full of classmates I had spent my entire life with, yet barely knew. It was honestly a little sad. I had always been more of an observer than a socializer, like an explorer observing the animals in a jungle. Then again, it didn't matter. The term following the herd was becoming more and more apparent the older I grew, Though then again, it wasn't their fault that they were this way, and it wasn't my fault that I was this way either. I felt like an alien who had landed on a foreign land and had a front row seat to see how the human world turned. As the class started to draw to a close, the chatter and noise only grew. Unfiltered noises filled my ears, distracting me even more. The seemingly unending tones, tremors, and changes in my classmates' voices became more apparent to me. In studying people, I found myself gradually learning the different types of personalities a person could have and how they express themselves. I hyperanalyzed their body language, the almost random clothing choices, makeup they wore, and the way they wore their hair, always playing games to try and rationalize and guess the thought process that led to them wearing Crocs to school. Every high school clique and hideaway student was never safe from my ever-watching eye, though they would never know that. Chimed out, ripping me from my spiraling thoughts, the small yammering now reaching crescendo, which was joined by the scraping of chairs and clanging of tables. I tried to blend into the crowd, to go unnoticed by my teacher, yet to no avail. "James, we still need to talk," Mr. Hansen called out after me. I quickly placed the tardy note down and rushed out, mumbling a quick excuse and mentioning to talk tomorrow before slipping out of the room. I walked behind the clamoring horde of students, out of the dilapidated school building and towards the awkwardly placed prefabs that held my art class. A small crowd had gathered outside the school building, a scrawny teacher stuck between two well-known jocks of the school. I watched in awe and disgust as it was broken up, still confused as to why they would continuously fight, yet to no gain for either of them. The crowd around them only grew, despite the teacher's shove to disperse. They were all waiting for the fight to continue, for the thrill of watching fist-to-fist combat, despite the victor. I chalked it down to the same reason people watch wrestling. They knew it was fake. After all, who would truly risk their lives for a few views? But seeing it so close and feeling the pain of seeing someone else in pain seemed to thrill the crowd. Even if I did have the time to stop and watch, I was never the kind of person to take pleasure in seeing people hurt each other. The thrill I understood, yet why not derive it from something else? I saw no sense in fighting when doing so rarely benefited anyone. As I approached my next class, the image of Abby's face illuminated the neon walls of my mind, like a projector teasing a theater screen with fleeting moments of depth and purpose. Ever since I met her, she had occupied a part of my mind in a way I'd never experienced before. Love at first sight had always been irrational to me until I saw her. Whenever I wasn't near her, I felt like a part of me was missing. We had only talked a handful of times, which made me think that this sort of affection was sad, yet her presence had such a strange effect on me, an almost addicting effect. I'm sure most of you can understand, and if you can't, I almost pity you. There are people in life which we pass on a daily basis, barely aware of their existence. But sometimes, when the stars align, you can find a person who fills a space inside your little world you didn't even realize needed filling. As I walked up the creaking stairs into my art class, I could see Abby sitting solo at a shared desk. Same makeup, hairstyle, and outfit she wore over the last few days. She was doodling in her notepad, clearly distracted from the cold that filled the oddly lit room. A small smile spread across my face as I sat down, not too far away from her, trying to be as inconspicuous. I frowned, seeing she hadn't noticed me at all. Then again, it was better she didn't see me. After a few moments of silent watching and a mental storm of emotions, I decided it was time to try and initiate a conversation to avoid looking creepy. As I opened my mouth to greet her, I felt a warm stickiness strike against my hand, the gross yet familiar feeling of freshly chewed gum that had been discarded under the desk. I let out a rather loud yelp of disgust, retracting my hand from where it was and rubbing it against my jeans in vain. Small snickers from a group of known bullies came my way, causing my cheeks to flush, embarrassed. I looked over to where Abby sat, her hunch-over posture still in a calm position, unfazed by my drama. I couldn't help but smile, knowing that she didn't care to follow the crowd. She, too, was like me, lost in her own world. While I was lost in little patterns, she was lost in doodles and drawings. A perfect team. Jason, a rather rambunctious boy, who was currently praising the fight that had taken place, took a seat beside Abby. I watched with glee as Abby shrugged away from him slightly, moving her book away from his view. It was nice to see that Abby had the same ideals I had about Jason, even if the confirmation was nonverbal. He was arrogant, loud, and honestly moronic. I had tried and tried to give him a redemption in my mind, yet he had no redeemable qualities. Maybe as he grew older, he would mature. Everyone had the chance to mature after all. End of Chapter 1, Part 1. Okay, so I hope you liked that first part of the edit of Onision's book. I'm currently experimenting with the direction I want my channel to grow, so if you want me to try something or look into something, then just tell me in the comments below. Thank you to my Patreon, you are the real MVP. If you would like to support me and keep me doing this kind of stuff, consider supporting me on Patreon, link in the description. That's it, I'm Hearts, I'm just trying, stay safe, and bye!